I'm so super excited to have our guest speaker here today. Melissa calls her my girl crush because I'm always texting Melissa, did you see about Brigitte? And and she just thinks that I'm hilarious about it. So honestly, I was completely out of my comfort zone even asking Brigitte to speak today, but I'm so glad I did because here she is. And of course she said yes and was so super willing. And her stats honestly speak for her success in the business. She's such an amazing person outside of that. She's a wife and mom to 3 kiddos. Why will my Facebook notifications not stop? She's a wife, a mom to 3 kiddos. She's a 3-time elite coach. And this to me is the hugest and most volume speaking stat of all. She's a Success Club 10 All-Star legend and has hit Success Club 10 for 50 consecutive months. That is insane. I can't even hit 5 for 12 consecutive months. So I am like completely blown away by that stat. I just think that that's, like I said, just incredible and speaks volumes to what she's been able to accomplish. Let's see. There's a couple more stats. What else? Oh, she's also an executive leader on the leadership ladder, which is a big deal because and she's a superstar diamond. So she's a 15-star diamond. And the executive leader is another huge one because it's really hard to have so many team leaders on your team, and just speaks volumes of the depth of her team and what she's been able to accomplish in not all that long. I think, has it been 5 years, Brigitte? 4. So 4 years, and she's managed to accomplish all of this. So all of that said, again, does not speak to the leader that she truly is. I love, love, love hearing her voice on the wall and seeing how vulnerable she is and sharing on her personal page as well. So with that all said, I'm going to hand the call over to Brigitte because I'm so excited to sit down and take notes and hear from you today.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay? Thumbs up. Thank you so much for having me on this call. I am totally flattered and honored, and I can tell you guys I've got Amanda speaking on a call to some of my coaches, and everybody's like, what? Like, how excited we Amanda over here? And I think it's so interesting how people are where like you're never a prophet in your own land, if that makes sense, So, I'll host a team call and my team's like, we've heard it, and then I'm like, Amanda's getting on and they're like, whoa. So you guys have an amazing leader here. And I was flattered that she would ask me to come and talk with you guys. And I asked her a little bit of like, I haven't met many of you, majority of you, I would say, and just kind of who you are. And like, just by a show of hands, like majority of you, I can't see, I guess, the people on the phone, but I mean, I can see everyone's a female. How many of you guys are like moms? Do you have like kids? Okay. And how many of you guys, this is like the first time you've ever really done network marketing or really had a business kind of like this? Like majority of people, right? Well, every hand went up on that one. That's the same for me. And that's something that I can say majority of my team is the same in that way too. And with that, there's a few really interesting things that happen. And I think this business altogether is very interesting because there's like this magical way that this business has of bringing our limiting beliefs to the surface so you can like face it and deal with it. And all of the things that you didn't realize you had as an issue, you now are like, oh, now I have that as an issue, right? And it's not that there's anything wrong with the business or that, this business is just like hard or this or that, but really, like if you're ever struggling in this business, it's not the business, it's some sort of limiting belief that you have, that's coming to the surface. I kind of think marriage has the same magical effect. I didn't realize all of the things that I got to work on and improve until I got married, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was selfish and had these little quirks, and now it's magnified when you get married. And your limiting beliefs are magnified in this business. And I think we stumble into this a lot of times and we become this accidental leader. And so there's a few things in that I've been learning this last year in particular. I think last year was a really hard year for me in several ways that really didn't have anything to do with the business, but more in my personal life. And I finally needed to deal with some experiences that happened when I was a child that I never had worked through, and things with my parents, and some problems with my children, and just so many things that were happening that I felt a little torn. You know, I'm like, I'm a mom first, right? And then with this business, I'm like, how do I balance these two things, and how do I work through these things? And I think that happens for a lot of people, you know, and I've been in this business long enough where I've seen trials knock people down. And I've seen some coaches take those trials and they adjust, and it's almost like those hard experiences propel them forward. And I feel that it comes down to a choice that you make. And that trial can be that opportunity for you to say, wow, I have this limiting belief. Now I get to work through it and change my belief about life, about myself, about the situation. And then it opens up this whole new possibility and this whole new world. Or you can have it like knock you on your feet. And it doesn't even have to be something about the business. I mean, with life. Like, I've seen coaches give up on getting almost to diamond because their child got sick. Or I've seen people give up because they gained weight and now they're just not feeling good on themselves. Or they miss a goal and doubt starts creeping in. Or maybe you hit a rank and then you drop it and you feel like, my business is worse off now than it was a year ago. And those are all trials. But every single one of those things that I just mentioned is something that I've gone through myself. So there's been times when I felt like, oh my gosh, like I had a coach almost get to diamond and quit. And I was like, how does this happen? I remember that was like my very first coach almost to diamond. And I was pushing so hard for that first year of going to leadership. And back then you only had to be a 2-star. And I was so close. And this girl needed half an emerald more. And she would have been to diamond. And I already had the diamond on the other side. And she's like, I just can't do this. I'm not cut out for this. I'm giving up. And I was like, what did I do wrong? Like, it just made me question myself as a leader, because of course the other diamond on the other side is my husband. So I'm like, I can't do this. What am I, who am I trying to kid? I've had a child get really sick. I have gained weight, and then I've set several goals and missed them. I've dropped rank before several times. And have felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm really progressing. There was this instance this Christmas where my daughter had to be hospitalized for 2 weeks after I cut off her finger ice skating. And that was traumatizing for me. That was traumatizing for my daughter. That was traumatizing for my family. And that experience was actually good, because it made me face a limiting belief, right, that I had, that I'm just going to screw up my kids and I'm a bad mom. And I didn't realize how strong that belief was until I was now face to face with the reality that I just cut off my daughter's finger, and my other kids saw that and they saw me freak out. And how is this going to affect them, and future experiences, not just in this moment, but I damaged my child. And I didn't realize how much that belief was there, that I'm going to ruin my kids. And but I'll tell you, then that very same experience, my husband had a completely different experience. For him, and I know that our roles were slightly different there, right? Where it was my mistake, that it was my ice skate that went over her finger and cut it off. But still, he didn't have the same limiting belief that I did. And so he rolled through that experience much, much easier. And I point that out because, like I said, if you're having a hard time with something, it's really not the experience, it's your belief. And so if you're sitting there being like, I'm having a hard time getting my coaches to diamond, okay, so what belief do you have that's fueling that behind it? Because is it really your ability to get coaches to diamond? Or is it really your ability to hit success club? And maybe I'm preaching to the choir because you guys all hit success club. But is it a belief, or is it really like ability or belief? And I feel that many times it's that limiting belief of maybe behind the core of that is I'm not good enough, or there's something flawed in me. And, or maybe like I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not magnetic enough, or whatever belief that there is beneath it. But you get to face that now, and you get to work through it, and that's a good thing. But I think in this business, because those limiting beliefs come to the surface in it, many people can't handle it. And they're like, I don't want to even think about it. And so I'm going to blame Beachbody for this problem, and I'm going to leave. Like I see that actually in marriages, right? Unfortunately, sometimes there's a marriage problem. And when somebody starts building a business and making changes, that marriage problem is now brought to the surface, and those things need to get worked out. And is it the Beachbody that's influencing the marriage and the problem, or is there something wrong in the marriage? And so many times people are like, oh, my spouse and I just can't do Beachbody because it's like coming in between me and my husband. I'm like, okay, is it Beachbody, or is there something wrong with the marriage, that you guys need to work through? And I'm just kind of pointing this out because I don't want people to leave the game. It's like getting rid of Beachbody is not going to solve, oh, there's nothing wrong here, So I'm encouraging you in everything that you make that commitment right now, that you signed up to be a better person. And you signed up to increase your life in a heightened way. So don't ever leave the game. I loved that at Summit where Jeff Hill talks about how we really shorten our ability when we say I'm in it for a year and I'm committed for a year. Be here a year from now. And it's like, do you want to better your life? Okay, then you're in this for life, because this is only good. This is only going to increase your life and make you a better person. This is no well, I'm going to see if this is for me, or this is if I can do this. Or if I can be the best, then I'm going to stick at this. If I can't be the best, then I'm going to give up. It's like, do you want to be a better person? Yes. Are you going to be a better person for doing this? Yes. Are you a better person for doing your workout? Yes. Are you a better person for drinking your Shakeology? Yes. Are you a better person for doing your personal development? Are you a better person for serving other people? Yes. So why would you ever back away from this and take a step back, Now, let me kind of come over here to my notes because I want to talk with you more about this with being a mom. So as I mentioned, this last year was really hard for me. And so one of the things that I did to stay engaged in the game and not disengaged just because things got hard is I got a life coach. And and I started going to therapy a lot. And therapy is a very good thing. And one of the things that my life coach talked to me about that was really significant for me is the difference between a male energy and a female energy. And he shared how the female energy, and for me, I'll just say this, I'm not a feminist kind of person. So if you are I don't really know if I'm going to say something that's going to offend you. I'm sorry. Or if you're I don't really, whatever. I'm the kind of person who I'm just am who I am. I'm not going to label myself as this female energy or this male energy or a feminist or not feminist. I don't know. I'm I am how I am. I'm not going to try to define it in this certain category. And that's just kind of the way I am. But so I kind of when he started talking about male energy and female energy, I'm tuning him out a little bit. But as he continued on, I'm okay, I can see where this is applicable. And it was namely because I'm telling him, last year I kind of lost my passion for Beachbody. I'll be honest. I was kind of like, well, I was super passionate about it at the beginning, and then it just got hard. And a lot of coaches canceled, and I was like, this is kind of hard. And then I had all these things going on, as I said, in my home, where I felt that drive to like, I got to take care of this, you know, I've got to take care of my family. And that takes priority over, you know, filling a challenge group. And so I was kind of struggling. And he talked about how that female energy is in all of us as females here, where we want to take care of our family. We want to connect with people. You know, we want to make sure that our kids are okay. And we want to make sure, like, you know, that a house is, like, you make a home, you know, and that's the nesting part, and making things pretty, and just the relationships. The male energy is very, like, no emotion, to the point, numbers driven, facts driven, very, like, excuse my language, but the only way to describe this is, I'm going to get shit done. Like, boom, like, to the thing, like, let's do this, right? And you know, probably some females who are very like, okay, come on, we're doing this, boom, 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 boom. And like, they know how to channel that male energy like that, right? And like other people, and the female, like very strong female energies are like, whoa. And I could even see on some of your expressions, some of you guys were like, whoa, taken back by that. But that's a very strong like male energy. Now, here's the thing in this business. It's important that you honor that female energy in you, and you know how to nourish it, and you know how to step in to the male energy and harness that power to get shit done, okay? Like, that's something that you have to respect, because in every single like person, there is the ability really to even do both. Like, I know some men who are very more feminine, right? Or they know how to take care of that. Like, and they can let that female energy, if I really need to take care of my family, empower them to get stuff done, right? But I share this because one of my coaches, and she's actually spoke at Summit, and some of you guys might have heard her. Keisha Fitzgerald is one of my coaches, and she is very, like, when you ask her, she's like, no, I'm more male energy. Like, I'm more like, I'm going to get stuff done. Like, I've always, like, very independent. I'm not this little girly girl. Like, she's very, like, I'm going to get stuff done. But at the same time, like, she was not respecting that female energy in herself. And so she kind of got a little, like, lack of passion in this business. And she's like, I'm just not driven by these numbers. Like, I know I should probably hit these goals to be a higher rank, but I just don't care. And I'm like, okay, because you're trying to live in this male energy. So what fuels your female energy? And she's not married. She doesn't have kids, but she still has a female energy in her that she has to nurture. So I'm like, okay, you have to make sure you are going out with your friends, that you are connecting with people, that you are focusing on those relationships, that you're doing something for yourself to nurture that female energy. And that's going to fill up your bucket, so then you now have the ability to step into the male energy. Because if you try to find the source of your energy, like, and fuel yourself up from the male energy, you're not built that way. This is not going to happen. And for her, that was a turning point in her business, to be like, okay, I know what I need to do. Like, I need to be driven by these relationships, and I need to be driven by that connection with other people. This made a difference for me because I was feeling burnt out in this business and feeling like, oh, I'm just like don't really care anymore about, you know, rank and titles and this and that. Like, I just want to take care of my family. I'm like, okay, well, I need to remember that I do have to nurture that female energy. I need to do something every day where I'm spending that quality time with my family. I'm doing those things that are nurturing that female energy, but let the female energy empower me in that I'm going to get stuff done by tapping into that. So in that, I mean, when I started, what fueled me in this business was the female energy of, if I don't take massive action, my family's not going to be okay. And that female, just, you see how that's a female energy, harnessing the male energy of, I've got to take care of my family, right? And so I'm going to get stuff done. Like the female energy of, got to do something, like, or my family's not going to be okay. And so we've got to take action. But when it came to a place of like, you know, okay, we have the finances and everything is okay now. So how do I take care of my family still? And this is still that, like, I've got to make sure I'm setting that good example for my kids. I've got to make sure I'm showing them like what's really possible for them in their lives. And, you know, yes, spending time with them and connecting with them one-on-one so they know like mommy cares about them and that I'm there for them. And let that fuel this, okay, now I'm going to step into it. And I'm talking about this, like, and I hope it's like giving the different examples helps you see how this applies for yourself. But I know, like, last night I was talking with one of my coaches and she's like, I just have so much fear of rejection. And she's like, how do I get over this? I can't get over this fear of rejection. And we're talking about it over and over and over again. And she's like, just cannot get out of this space. And I'm like, well, tell me, you had to find something that you fear more that is related to this female energy. And as we're talking about it, I mean, she's in the National Guard. And so she's out here in Arizona right now, even though she lives back east for the National Guard right now. And I'm like, do you fear more of telling your children, I'm sorry, mommy can't be there for your school play? Like, you're letting your fear of what other people think of you be stronger than the fear of disappointing your own children. Like, you are more concerned about what these people think of you than you care about what your own children's feelings and memories are with or without you, right? And so it's tapping into that female energy, and that is what's going to empower her to take action. So I just think in this business, like, if you feel burned out or if you have fear or if you're feeling like whatever, you have to make a list of for yourself, what is nurturing my female energy? And I think it's going to be a little different for everybody, but it's like, okay, and what empowers me in that female energy? So the people who are going to have this be a changing point in their business, I can see are already writing down the notes of like, oh, I'm going to think about that after this call. What really is it that fuels my female energy and makes me like, fills my bucket? And maybe some of you guys already know off the top of your head. But taking care of that is going to empower you with now the ability to step into the male energy of, I'm going to get stuff done. But I think it's important for everyone to realize, because this is the first time I ever had a job. This is the first time I've ever been in that male role of like working, you know, and providing for my family and doing those kinds of things. And so you can't like live in that space constantly, because you're gonna get dried out. It's not gonna like honor your truth, if that makes sense. Okay, and then I want to share this analogy with you, and then I want to go back to the first thing I was talking with you about, the limiting beliefs. Now, how many of you guys, you know, if you're a mom, then probably your kids saw the movie Cars and, you know, Lightning McQueen and that movie. So I want you guys to pretend that you are a car and you are Lightning McQueen here. You've got Mater and Sally and all that kind of stuff. Now, cars are designed to move forward, right? And they're designed to drive and go down the freeway, down the road. But think about this. The natural state of that car is stop. It doesn't just naturally move, even though it was designed to move. But you have to make an intentional action of turning on that car and pressing that gas pedal to see that car go in motion. Now, how many of us are sitting along the freeway in our car and we're watching all these other cars zoom past us, and we're sitting there thinking, what's wrong with me? That girl like started at the same time as me, and she's a diamond and I'm an emerald, or she's a 15 star and I'm a 10 star. Like, something must be wrong with me. I got a lemon of a car. My car's broken down, and that car's the Mercedes, and I'm driving a Hyundai. Like, something's wrong with me. And the reality is, you're not pressing on the gas pedal. You're not making the intentional choices to move your car forward. You're sitting there thinking, I should have just woken up today and felt passion. I should have just opened my inbox today and had a flood of messages of people wanting to join my business. Guys, like, you can't live in a reactionary state with this business, with your life, and see the potential of what you're really, truly capable of. That car cannot just move down the freeway unless there's an intentional choice to turn it on and press the gas pedal. So think about that. For yourself, if you have fears, you have self-doubts, congratulations, you are a human being. Every single person has that, guys. Me, Lindsay Matway, I've talked to her. I've talked to Melanie Mitro. Every single person has self-doubt, has fears, has that fear of rejection. The difference is, if you live in that reactionary state and say, this is my natural reaction to this situation, that means because it's the first response, I have to listen to it. And that's bull crap. Just because that's the natural response does not mean that's what you have to choose. You now make a choice and say, what do I want to create? What's my intentional choice today? Can I turn on the car? How can I press on the gas pedal and move in the direction I want to move? Because there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your car. There's nothing wrong with the way that you've been designed. You have the same ability to go down that freeway, zooming just as fast as anybody else. Now, I'll tell you guys, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be like, okay, truthfully here, this morning I woke up, and yesterday we had like this team event, and over at my house, like my sponsor is Scotty Hobbs, and he came into town for the Phoenix Super Saturday, and he's been staying with our family. So he's still here, and because he's here, I was like, oh, we'll get my local coaches all over and we'll just have a little dinner last night. And so everyone's in my home, and there's a lot of people, and I was really trying my best to like connect with each one and talk with every single person. And I woke up this morning feeling really guilty and kind of getting down on myself and kind of giving myself shame and thinking like, Brigitte, like, this one coach was there and like you really didn't stop and connect with her. And she showed up at Super Saturday and you really didn't connect with her either. Like, you're failing. Like, she deserves an apology. Like, she probably hates you. She's probably like, Brigitte's the worst sponsor ever. Like, she didn't even take time for me. And I'm sitting here basically like starting to just beat myself up, thinking of like all the things I've done wrong and all the things I could have done better, and been like, oh, I should have done this last night and I didn't. And I snapped at my kids, and I don't even know if they know I love them, and haven't done the laundry, and like I'm just starting like racking up these things that I'm doing wrong, and I'm like, okay, stop. I get to stop and be like, hey, literally standing in the mirror, looking in the mirror this morning and being like, Brigitte, you get to choose what today is going to be like. And if you stay in this point of living in a reactionary state and just being like, oh, these are the default settings of my mind, and it's just going and it's just going to think of all the things I did wrong and all the reasons why I shouldn't feel good about myself, then that's what I'm going to create. But I have a choice, and I'm going to choose to give myself some grace, and I'm going to choose to say I'm learning. And I have made a lot of changes in my life. And so if I see now something else that needs to be changed, I can do it. I can now do this too. Now, every single one of you guys, I'm sharing that because every single one of you guys are on this call. So you have, in some aspect of your life, made changes. and you have grown and you have improved. And guess what? You're going to screw up. You're going to do something wrong. You're going to let yourself down. And you, in that moment, get to do the same thing and say, you know what? I didn't do this the way I wanted to, but I know I can do better. And I know I have the ability to make changes that I want to make because I have made changes up to this point. And so I can keep on getting better. And I'm just learning and I'm getting better, but I'm working on it. And so like there's some grace that you can give yourself. Does that make sense? But don't think that, okay, there's fear in my mind. This is the default setting. Know that that's the default setting of every single human being. Just like it's the default setting of a car to be stopped. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm gonna come back to my notes, make sure I'm going over everything I wanted to. I wanted to give you guys, end out with 5 steps here. So going back to these limiting beliefs and ideas, it's really important for you guys to like realize that you have the ability to change, right? That limiting belief, and realize like any struggle that you're having, it's not the business, it's not this, it's not even your marriage, right? Or it's not even like the person that you're talking to. It's some sort of limiting belief that you have in that thing. So in every single painful moment, be like, what limiting belief is fueling this situation? And it's important that you realize it's something that you can change. And I'm starting with that because I want you to realize that if you think that that's the way it has to be, and you argue for that limiting belief, and you're telling your sponsor, no, really, nobody wants to join my challenge group. No, really, like nobody on my team is a builder and wants to go diamond. If you argue for that limitation, congratulations, you get to keep it. And that's lame. That's a lame like thing that you're going to sit there and argue for something. But do you really want to keep it? Do you really want to have those excuses dominate your life? Because if you argue that it's the reality for you. But I want you to have that little seed of doubt in your mind where you realize, I don't think it has to be this way. What if it could be different? Like, what if this is just the story I'm telling myself and I can choose a different story? So 5 steps. Step number 1, you get to recognize that there is a narrator for your life. In every single experience that you have, there's a narrator that is fueling that and telling you this is the meaning to this experience, right? My daughter's finger gets cut off. I give myself the narration of, Brigitte, you're a crappy mom. And you're just going to screw up your kids. Look at this. You're damaging your children. And that's the narration I'm telling myself, right? My daughter goes to school. I have two girls, so this is my other daughter. My daughter goes to school, and she has kind of a hard time making friends. And so in my mind, if that was me and I was that little girl, like, am I going to school and not having anyone to play with at recess and telling myself nobody likes me and there's something wrong with me, right? That's a narration. And that's probably the narration I would have told myself. Keep that story in mind because I'm going to tell you a different way that you can narrate that, which is what my daughter's doing. But step 1, recognizing that there's a narration. Realize it's not always reality, but it's a narration. Step number 2, I want you to write down the story this narrator is telling you. And literally, I want you to write it down. And the reason why is I want you to write it down so that it objectifies it. And it helps you see really how ridiculous it is, right? Am I really completely damaging my children? Like, am I really this abusive, horrible, terrible, no good, bad mom? Is that really the truth? Or do I really love my children and I make mistakes, you know? So, but just writing it down objectifies it. It's kind of like with your children when they have the fear of there's a monster in my closet and you're like, okay, now of all the children in the world, you are the one that this horrible, nasty monster wants to live in the closet for. You know, like it objectifies it and you're like, okay, this is really ridiculous, right? Step number 3, I want you to ask yourself is this story empowering? Or is this story holding me back? So, for example, with me, with my daughter, being like, okay, now if I choose to believe this narration that's going through my mind right now, because I always have a choice, if I choose to believe this, what will be the result? I'm going to shut down. I'm going to live up to that story. I'm going to keep on screwing up my kids, right? This very morning, as I woke up, and I don't know why, that the very first thing, literally, the alarm clock goes off, and I'm laying in my bed for a minute, and all of these thoughts were going through my mind of why I'm such a crappy sponsor and friend and doing all these things wrong. And I just sit there and look at myself in the mirror this morning, and say, is this serving me? Is this holding me back? Is this going to empower me to be in a place to actually add value to other people? Or is this going to hold me back? And I had to say, yes, this is not what I want to choose to believe. Now, I'll tell you guys, this very step is probably the most important one that most people screw up. Because I think a lot of people can identify your issues, right? You can identify what's holding you back, and you can even write it down. Because you know how to write it down and send it in a message to your sponsor and tell her all the reasons why things aren't working out. But instead of asking yourself if this is empowering or if this is holding you back, you ask yourself, this is true. Let me see all the reasons why it's true. So you're asking yourself the wrong question there. So make sure you're asking yourself if this is empowering. And then step number 4, I want you to write out a different story. Write out a different story, almost as if you are an outsider looking in. And what would you tell this supportive friend of yours, in that situation, right? So I'm sitting there this morning beating myself up because I didn't spend the time that I would have liked with every single person who showed up at my house last night. Now, if that was my friend, what would I be saying to her? Would I be telling her, you know what, I am sure not every single person anticipated that you would be spending one-on-one time with them for 2 hours. I'm sure people could see there was a lot of people. Brigitte, it's okay. You're doing a great job. What would you say is this supportive friend? Because guys, why are we so mean to ourselves and so nice to other people? If your friend left her purse in the house and she got in the car and you guys are leaving, would you be like, you're such an effing idiot? What's wrong with you? You're so stupid. You always do stuff like this. Would you ever say something like that to your friend? Never, right? Excuse me. But yeah, how many times do we do that to ourselves? We're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I left my wallet in the car. I'm such an idiot. And it's the self-talk. I don't know. Maybe it's only me. But in that, I want you to write out a different story. What's another way to look at this? So for me, with the experience with my daughter, it made the difference for me. How did I get to a place where I could possibly ever move past that? And I'll tell you guys, I told myself a different story. I am telling myself that in some way that had to happen, and that by it being me and by me cutting off her finger, in some way I saved her life. That if I hadn't done that, maybe someone else would have been the one to run into her when she fell on the ice and had a skate go into her head and she would have been brain dead. Or, maybe someone else would have come in and cut off her entire arm and she would have bled to death and died. I'm telling myself that I volunteered to God and said, I'll be the one whatever, so that she could have this experience and see how strong she really is and see how much her family really does love her and see our whole family unify. But it needed to be something less drastic than death. And I'm choosing to believe that I saved her life in some way by cutting off her finger versus letting a skate go into the side of her head. And I'm writing a different story. And that different story is a choice that I made versus the reactionary first thought that came into my mind of I'm a horrible mother. And by telling myself a different story, I'm empowered to say, I do love my children, and this experience can even be a witness of how much I do love my children, and I can move forward, and I can do this. So you can choose a different story that is empowering, right? Now, step number 5, you get to tell yourself this new narrative. And here's the trick. Seek out evidence to support it. Okay? So I mentioned my daughter and how she has a hard time making friends. Now, one narration in that, she's come home and told me like that she doesn't really have kids to play with at recess. And excuse me. And I've asked her before, I'm like, so what happens when you go up to the kids and you say like, hey, can I play with you? And she's like, well, sometimes they say no. And sometimes they like, well, sometimes they'll let me, she goes, but sometimes they just, will say no. And I'm like, oh, so what do you do? And she's like, well, I just figure that they're in the middle of a game and they don't want to stop and explain it to me. So that's the narration she's telling herself. Or is it the narration, if it was me as a kid, I probably would have told myself they don't like me, and they don't want to be my friend. But here's the thing. My daughter, this was like this last school year. My daughter came home one day and she started writing her name on there, Awesome Andy, on all of her school papers. And she came and asked me, she goes, Mom, how do I change my name? And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, I don't want people to call me Andy anymore. And I'm like, what do you want people to call you? And she's like, well, I want people to call me Awesome Andy. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, she's like, I want my birth certificate to say Awesome Andy. And so my teachers, everybody knows. And I'm like, so why do you want? She goes, well, I just think I'm awesome. And so I think people should call me Awesome Andy. And I'm telling you, I have never met a single girl who has more self-confidence than her. And when she doesn't have kids to play with at school, you know what she tells herself? And this is what she told me. I am so awesome because I get to choose. I get to go from friend to friend to friend and to group to group to group. And if they don't want to play with me, it's just because they're in the middle of a game and they don't want to stop and play with me. But that means I get to play with this person. And I'm so awesome. I'm walking around and letting myself spread the love by playing with all these different groups. And yet someone else could sit there and say, I don't really have a group. I don't really fit in. I don't really have a friend who comes to my house after school and wants to play. I don't really have someone who comes up to me and says, we're playing together. And I even go to other groups and ask them if they want to play and they don't want to. What narration are you telling yourself? Are you choosing to be the awesome Andy? Or are you choosing to be the victim? Because I'm telling you guys, in this business, there are people who want to work with you. There are people who you get to influence and who are going to be better only because of you. And it doesn't matter how hard this is. It's not the business. It is your belief. Because if my daughter can have that experience at school and walk away thinking, I am awesome, Andy, then you can be in this business and helping people. And know that, excuse me, that you were born to do this, that you're here for a reason. And if you're struggling, make sure you're taking care of your female energy and letting that drive so that you can harness the male energy of, I'm going to get stuff done. And I'm going to knock this out of the park. But I'm doing it because I love my family. I'm doing it because I care so much about them that I'm not going to let them suffer. I'm not going to let that be the case. And when you catch yourself in a negative thought process, stop and realize there's nothing wrong with your car. You have the same ability to fly down that freeway, but you have to make a choice. You have to be intentional about it. You can't just say this fear is always here, so I have to listen to it. That's not the truth. The fear is always going to be there because you are a human being. But you can make a choice and you have the power to do so. And that's all I wanted to share with you guys today.
I think we should all unmute so we can do our standing ovation round of applause. I don't really know how to follow that up, honestly. I know. Yeah, I think we all did. I know I can relate to your story personally on so many levels, Brigitte, but we started kind of in a similar position. And, and I think so did many of the coaches on my team kind of started in a position of, because you attract who you were. And so many of us started with that fight to save our families, really, and do that. And then you do kind of, I know, me personally too, you kind of hit that wall like, okay, well now we're good. So now what motivates me? So this was amazing. I don't know. Do you have maybe just 5 minutes for questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You guys feel free to unmute yourselves, ask questions or comments. Anything. I know I'm just kind of speechless. I can't think of anything myself. So I hear someone unmuted. Don't be shy. Speak up. Oh, there's Aubrey. That's Aubrey. I can see she's.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, Brigitte, I have a question for you. So coming from your beginning, similar from Amanda, of needing to fight for your family to take action, and I can tell you've obviously done a lot of personal development over the years in order to make those shifts. What can you say as far as your family and your finances? What has been like the personal development thing that you can say that spoke to me the most and that made the most impact in my evolution of how I thought about providing for my family?
So what do you mean? Like what, to address what limiting belief? That like I can, or that it's okay to be successful, or what do you mean by with finances and providing for my family?
Well, that I guess that you could, just getting past the fact that you were empowered and that you could run with this. So you say you never had a business before, or never had a job before. So going from not having that foundation to being where you are now, do you feel like there was a main piece that gave you that solid like girl boss power to believe that this was something you had, that not only that you wanted to do but you could do?
Yeah, and this is probably where some people may tune me out, or it's kind of personal, I guess, but so like my journey, my story is that I didn't really kind of explain a whole lot of my story, but I grew up very depressed. Maybe you can tell by me talking about I wake up in the morning and there's this negative self-talk that might be a clue for you, but I didn't know that I had a choice, in that. And so I let that negative talk run the show, and so I was depressed from a very, very early age. And I was in 6th grade writing suicide letters during recess. And I didn't want to be here. Like I felt just so poorly about myself. I felt I had no value. I felt the world would be a better place if I wasn't here. And I just felt so bad about myself. And that makes me emotional to think that any young child could feel that way, about herself. And so that ran the show for a long time. And I landed in a mental hospital when I was 21. And all my friends were graduating from college and getting married, and I'm locked up in a mental institution because of on suicide watch. And that was the bottom of the bottom, right? And I came out. I said I'm not dating anybody, and 9 months later met my husband. And I was on so many heavy medications just to be stable. But yet 3 months after we got married, I was pregnant. And that scared the living daylights out of me. And we were not trying. we were using birth control and still got pregnant. 6 months after he was born, I got pregnant again, using 2 forms of birth control. And that was scary as heck. And then I had an IUD put in. I got pregnant again, and I lost that baby. And I just, all these hormones, all these things going on, and I just was like, I am just a mess. And I was also just never had been healthy, fit, any of that kind of stuff. So I'm overweight. I was the mom putting the TV on in front of the kids while I slept on the couch, just like, I just am now too into my faith to end my life, but I am just going to endure to the end and wait for it to get over because life is too painful. And so, yeah, how does somebody who doesn't think she has any value to even live get to a place where I know I'm here for a reason? I know I'm in Beachbody for a reason. And I will tell you, like, as much as anybody doesn't want to hear it, it was strictly just a very God moment and a spiritual experience for me, because I saw my coach on social media and I saw him posting, and it gave me the belief that I could maybe do P90X. So I started P90X, and I just was very curious what life could be like if I took care of myself. And it was that curiosity that overpowered anything. And I actually wanted to talk about curiosity in this call, and I bypassed it. But curiosity is a very powerful emotion. Like, when you think about it, like, are you curious enough to see what could actually happen in this business if you actually did the vital behaviors every single day? Like, are you curious? Are you curious if you could actually do this? Like, are you curious what your results could be if you actually stuck to a program and followed the nutrition plan? Like, I was curious, and that curiosity took over enough that I wanted to see if I could do P90X and use Shakeology. And lo and behold, I saw amazing results. And I was curious about the business, but I didn't think I could do it. And it came down, so I just watched my coach for like 4.5 months. And there was one particular day when I was reading my scriptures, and there was this scripture in the Bible about how, and I didn't even ask Amanda, like, if this is okay for me. I don't know if anybody on here believes in God or not, but I was reading the Bible, and there was a scripture about how, like, this person was judging a beggar and saying, like, if he really wanted basically to have money and means to provide for himself, he would do something about it, right? And, like, I realized, and then, like, Christ was chastising them, saying, like, you're all beggars. Like, you all, like, it's up to you to help one another. And I realized in that moment that, like, I had that attitude about this. I'd had the attitude that if somebody wants to get healthy and fit, they don't need me. Like, if somebody wants to better their life, they don't need me. If somebody wants to build a business, they don't need me. And I realized in that moment that, like, there are people who would connect to me that would never connect to anybody else. And that if I could actually do P90X and see results and make changes, me, of all people, me, that I could do that, then I had an obligation to pay this forward and to talk about it. And I realized in that moment that if I didn't do this, there are people who would never get their chance. And I couldn't live with that. I couldn't live with that haunting idea, because I had already seen so many changes in my life just by sticking to a fitness program and doing it. Like, I was not the same person already. That had started this awakening, and there were so many more changes to come, but that had changed already enough in my life that I knew I couldn't let someone else keep living the life I had lived, of not believing themselves and thinking there's, like, what's the point? And so I had to. And so I don't even know if it's so much of a belief of, I can do this. This is awesome. I'm going to rock it, of more of, I have to do this. I have an obligation to pay it forward. And I can't fathom facing God one day and saying, thank you for giving me a chance. I didn't pay that forward and give that chance to anybody else. I can't. That fear of facing God with that on my shoulders is stronger than any fear I had of what is this person going to think about me if I invite them? Or what is this person going to think of me if I post? And so for me, that, like I said, I had to do this. And so I didn't have a turning point in this. I mean, there's so many, like, you hit barriers and you break through it. But I did start this business running out the gate. And I did start this business, like, all in and with a strong belief, because I had worked through that before to even get to the point of signing up, you know? So it's kind of a long answer, and I don't know if that really helps, but there's a lot of different personal developments that have helped, like, in different barriers, but the belief part of it, of how I even do this, came from really connecting with God.
I know everyone's time is precious, and I honestly, I hate to let Brigitte go. I want to just steal her and have her at all times. I hope that you guys share this recording with absolutely every single coach in your downline, even those who have gone inactive. I know if you guys are anything like me, you're thinking of all the people who you've let give up on themselves. And you're feeling that obligation of, I can't believe I let that person buy into their limiting beliefs. And you know now that you have to share this recording with them. And I hope that some of you who have been struggling recently to find your why again, feel that obligation. I know that I've said those words in not such an eloquent way to some other people at some point. And I think, you know, it just has fueled my fire again. When we have been gifted with what we have in this business, how can you not wake up and feel obligated to pay that forward? So thank you for being so eloquent and for sharing your story and being so vulnerable and giving us such good action tips, Brigitte. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so, so, so much.
Thank you for having me on this call. I appreciate it.
You're here today. So thanks so much, guys. Bye.